Hello, my name is Dr. Olivia Sanderfoot, and I am the Program Director of Project Phoenix, investigating bird responses to smoke. Thank you for taking the time to learn a little bit more about our program. First, let's talk about the science behind Project Phoenix. We know that birds face myriad threats, including habitat loss from urbanization and climate change, invasive species, overexploitation, human-wildlife conflict, and pollution of soil and waterways. But air pollution is also a known risk to birds. Birds are vulnerable to air pollution, just like we are. Yet, air quality is often overlooked in conservation biology and wildlife management. And I find this utterly fascinating because we've known for over a century that birds are more sensitive to air pollution than we are. In the early 1900s, coal miners brought canaries down into the mines to help monitor levels of noxious gases, such as carbon monoxide. And this practice led to the use of the colloquial phrase, canary in the coal mine, which is used to refer to an early warning signal of some future danger. So more than 100 years ago, we already knew that birds were sentinel species for environmental health, and we've known for decades that birds are just inherently more vulnerable to air pollution than we are. Yet, today we know very little about how wild birds are impacted by poor air quality. And this is especially important right now because air pollution is actually increasing in many parts of the United States. Until recently, ambient concentrations of PM 2.5 or fine particulate matter, a commonly studied air pollutant due to its well-established links to public health, had been steadily declining in the US ever since Congress passed the Clean Air Act in 1970. For decades, increasingly stringent environmental regulations and technological advancements ensured that people and wildlife, like the birds we all love, were breathing cleaner and cleaner air. But in the last few years, our air quality has worsened and we've lost years of progress. Why is this? Well, one major reason for this is greater wildfire activity in the American West, like right here in California. Where there's fire, there's smoke. And as fires burn more frequently and ferociously, driven by climate change and the legacy of fire suppression, our communities and wildlife are increasingly exposed to dangerous smoke. And while the public health implications of increased smoke exposure is an emerging area of research, recent findings suggest that, at least for people, PM 2.5 from smoke may be even more toxic than PM 2.5 from traditionally considered urban and industrial sources. So in the age of megafires, we have and will observe more extreme smoke events, both in places prone to fire and those where smoke is a novel occurrence. So smoke is not a new thing in California. Many ecosystems in California are prone to fire, after all, from chaparral and the rain shadow of the Sierras to high elevation conifer forests. The places birds live and the lands we love are shaped by fire. But as fire intensifies, so does smoke, and prevailing winds can carry smoke hundreds of miles. And during a particularly intense fire season, when dozens of fires are burning across the state and in adjacent states, nearly all of California can be inundated by smoke. And this is what we saw in 2020. This is a satellite image taken on September 7th, 2020. And the dark orange circles mark the locations of fires. We can see smoke plumes leading from those fires and combining into a massive smoke plume that covers the entire state. So we've established that birds and other wildlife, just like our communities, right here in California, are inevitably and increasingly impacted by wildfire smoke. So to safeguard birds in a smokier world, we have to learn more about how smoke affects avifauna and identify conservation opportunities. So to start, how much do we even know right now about how wildfire smoke impacts birds? Well, as far as I'm aware, there are only 8 published peer-reviewed studies that have even considered the effects of wildfire smoke on the health or behavior of birds. And most of these studies do not apply rigorous statistics to explicitly test for an effect of smoke, which limits our inference. That said, we are able to say a few things about how birds are inevitably impacted by smoke. There are likely to be acute and chronic health outcomes linked to smoke exposure, including carbon monoxide poisoning, thermal and chemical damage to lung tissue, oxidative stress, immunosuppression, and respiratory and cardiovascular illness. And we know this because the chemicals and the gaseous and particulate components of smoke interact with cells in a way that allows us to predict these health effects. Those underlying health effects could also influence bird behavior. For example, birds may reduce their movement and vocalization when it's smoky, or they may exhibit fire avoidance or energy conserving behaviors triggered by smoke. There may also be some species that are attracted to smoke because they rely on resources that are created during fires, and smoke signals the availability of those resources. So there are a lot of ways that the health and behavior of birds could be impacted by smoke. And Project Phoenix is a new community science program to think more about that behavioral component. This is a program that is a joint partnership between the University of California, Los Angeles and the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. And our goal is to collect bird observations during the fire season. So why do we need to do this? Why do we need to make more of an intentional effort to collect data during this particular time of year? Well, most bird monitoring projects actually collect data in the spring and early summer to study breeding bird populations, but fires tend to occur later in the year. Project Phoenix is engaging community scientists across California in monitoring birds in the months of August, September, and October in order to provide valuable data on bird activity during the time of year when fires are highly likely to impact air quality. That will allow us to think more about how bird activity is linked to wildfire smoke. More importantly, to investigate effects of smoke, we really need data on bird observations in the same places time and time again throughout the fire season. We need those consistent surveys. To our knowledge, Project Phoenix is actually the first study intentionally designed to anticipate and then study smoke impacts. So it's a really exciting initiative that I'm thrilled to be part of. Let's talk more about data collection with Project Phoenix. So we're collecting data on the presence and abundance of birds during the fire season in California. And this will allow us to evaluate the impact of wildfire smoke on bird distributions and consider if these responses vary across habitats. And we're specifically going to consider how smoke influences use of bird feeders and bird baths in neighborhoods across California. And to do this, we're asking volunteers to choose their own monitoring site and then conduct weekly 10-minute point counts of all the birds that they are able to see and or hear during those 10 minutes and share those data with us in the form of an eBird checklist. So we're really just asking folks to take 10 minutes every week at a place of their choosing, starting now through the end of October, and tell us about the birds that they observe. In addition, when folks sign up, they will be asked to take a one-time online survey to collect additional information on site characteristics, such as the availability of bird feeders and bird baths, and that will allow us to think more about how different habitat features are mediating avian responses to smoke. We are well aware that participation in community science can be biased toward higher income and white communities. And so to encourage broader participation and support more equitable outcomes, we are actively recruiting beginner birders. And I'm particularly excited about engaging folks from communities who are underrepresented in birding and community science. And to support beginner birders, we have many resources on bird ecology and species identification available on our website. And in addition, I'm really excited to share that all of the volunteers with Project Phoenix have access to 5 free courses from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. So how can you help? We are actively recruiting volunteers, and anybody in California is more than welcome and encouraged to participate. But we're also recruiting supporting organizations. Your organization can help by promoting us on your website, sharing our project on social media, encouraging your staff, members, and volunteers to sign up to participate, establishing a monitoring site at your offices, or even allowing your staff to take time out of their workday to complete their weekly surveys. It's only 10 minutes after all. What we can offer in return includes promotion of your organization's programs, events, and other initiatives on our platforms, which reach hundreds of people every week, meetings with your team or membership to share our research in science and community science, community workshops on birding and species identification, and events on diverse career pathways in STEM for youth groups. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about Project Phoenix. We hope you'll consider signing up to volunteer or joining our initiative as a supporting organization. If you have any questions at all, feel free to get in touch. Thank you so much for your time, and happy birding.